Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Secret Services. I'm going to be your reader for today, Quintarrius Shakir. Please make sure to go to www.blackspectrumnetwork.com and purchase a private psychic reading. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to this video, and please share this video with someone in your spiritual family. If you would like to get in contact with me, you can add me on Facebook at that's Quintarrius Shakir. My name is spelled out in the credits of the video. Or you can follow me on Instagram, The Psychic Professor. Okay, so I got a request from some of my viewers that they wanted me to do a reading on Whitney Houston and answer questions that people had been having about Whitney Houston, her death, and how she went about living her life. So to begin, I'm going to investigate into the last 2 months of Whitney Houston's life in particular, and then I'll also be asking about a couple of things that that transpired in her life as well. But really, we're going to be largely focusing on the last 2 months of her life before she passed away. So before she passed away, let's see what was going on with her. Whitney's reading is speaking about her having an incredibly difficult time figuring out how to revive her music career, and her having it in her. She was essentially Whitney wanted to. She wanted to tour very casually, singing some of her older songs, and in addition to that, there was such a heavy demand around Whitney Houston's music, and for her to make a comeback, that she felt more compelled to produce new music, and she was fighting against her intuition. So her intuition told her, "Hey, you should tour off of your old sound, and don't worry about the new music, because as a legend, we will open the doors for you to be able to tour." At that particular point in time, this is talking about 2 months before Whitney Houston's death, I don't think that the industry was really looking for her. They weren't handing her out opportunities. They weren't offering her world tours. Actually, Whitney Houston is more popular after her, and this is what they're telling me. She's more popular now after her death than she was in those 2 months leading up to her death. But Whitney Houston was holding her nose through recording new tracks, new music, and she was being patient and waiting for a creative jolt to happen. But the creative jolt never happened. She never truly felt the lyrics that she was singing, and she didn't believe in the songs that she was creating. It was just music for her. That was it. It was just very. It was just a. It was kind of like she was working on autopilot after having been in the industry for so long that she, had thought to herself, well, hey, why is it that I would choose myself and what it is that I want to do? Instead, I should choose the fans, because that's what she's always done. Chosen the fans and put the fans and what they like and what they desire first. That's also why, and I'm also hearing this, that Whitney Houston's drug problem, she had the drug problem by trying to balance everyone else's needs. And when her career skyrocketed, there was the demand of the fans for her to sing certain songs, to perform a lot, to meet their expectations. And as a black woman, she felt incredibly pressured to do that. She was subservient to the needs of the fans, and that led to her having I'm hearing she was already addiction prone. There may be addiction that runs in her family through her father's side. I'm hearing that, and abuse on her mom's side. But nevertheless, her getting this creative work off of the ground was her challenge, and her feeling connected to this music was another challenge for her as well. Feeling spiritually conflicted about it. The people around Whitney were saying that this music, they were telling her, hey, we produced a new sound to where you can, where your voice can blend, or your music can blend in with the current sound of, I guess this was 2011, 2012. I can't really remember when Whitney Houston died. But in the early 2010s, she needed, the producers around her needed to craft music that had this mainstream edge. So it was like pop and B. Pop and B. That's how they were trying to sell her, as a pop and B artist. And of course, Whitney Houston moved forward with it. She said, okay, cool. That's what you all want to do for me. That's what you all want to do. That's how you want to set my career up. I got you. I'm going to do it. Give me the songs and I will do it. Put me in the studio. I will do it. I will move forward with it rapidly. And I think that she was in the middle of completing an album. Or she may have been in the middle of completing a couple of songs if they weren't for an album. But she was recording, she was creative, she was holding her nose through it, she didn't want to do it. She would have rather have taken more time to herself and just really spent it touring off of her old music, touring off of her old songs, not trying to create anything new. But she also feared fading into obscurity, and she listened to the people around. Now, the people around her are incredibly intelligent. They were predicting that Whitney Houston's the demand around her would steadily decline, almost to the same degree, and this is what they're telling me, to the same degree that Mariah Carey's career has declined. So yes, the money wasn't rolling in like it needed to be. The demand for Whitney wasn't rolling in like it used to, and they wanted to revive Whitney's career. Whitney went against her intuition to meet the demands of the fans, the demands of the industry, and that was what was on her mind, just largely following the boss's orders and allowing for their plan to work. Whitney Houston was phenomenal at just taking direction and listening to people. That's what I'm hearing about her. She was great at that. All right, so we're gonna before we get into the night that she died, there were a couple of questions that people just had about the course of her life relating to her intimate relationships. So first, most popularly, she was in a relationship with Bobby Brown. So what I want to, well, not what I want to know, but what I want to know and what the audience wanted to know was before Whitney's death, was she was Bobby Brown in love with her, and was she in love with Bobby Brown? What was their relationship like? Oops, I'll just shuffle it down here. What was the relationship like between Whitney and Bobby Brown? So I'm just going to pull straight from the top. Okay. They were Whitney and Bobby Brown were very much bonded through parenting. Bobbi Christina, they were both very, very hands off with her. It sounds like other people were raising her. But the main thing that Bobby would call about was to check on Bobbi Christina and ask Whitney Houston for updates about about Whitney's relationship with Bobbi Christina, how she'd been doing, and that was pretty much, they were pretty amicable. Whitney had already turned her back on this relationship. She had already walked away from it years ago, and she was pretty happy co-parenting with him, and very much that's it. She was happy co-parenting with him. But Bobby Brown seemed to want it more. Okay, practicality, work. So Bobby Brown, no, this is Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston was overly focused on her work. at that time. And I don't think that there was much room in her mind or in her heart to rekindle anything with Bobbi Brown. There was a lack of sexual energy and sexual chemistry between them. Whitney Houston was no longer attracted to Bobbi Brown, but Bobbi Brown is very, very much still attracted to Whitney Houston. He still thinks that she's gorgeous, and even at that time, he thought that she was gorgeous. So, okay, so Whitney and Bobbi, there was no intimate connection between them other than Bobbi was sexually attracted to Whitney and he felt that she had a good spirit. I'm seeing Whitney feeling more. She's not. Whitney Houston, for her, the door is closed. The chapter is closed on Bobbi Brown. And it wasn't something that she even intellectualized. She wasn't emotionally connected, spiritually connected, sexually attracted, any of that. She mainly wanted to co-parent. And Bobbi Brown still wanted to have sex with Whitney. He had been asking for it. He had been hoping that they could have some sort of sexual relationship at some point in time, but Whitney Houston wasn't giving into that. This left Bobbi Brown feeling even more isolated in his marriage, or I think he was married at the time, but I definitely hear that he was in a relationship with a woman, and he started feeling nostalgic. It wasn't just Whitney Houston that he had been in contact with. Bobbi Brown has a tendency to go back to old relationships. That's very much what I'm hearing in my ears. And so his dissatisfaction with his current relationship led him to always calling. He could only reach Whitney when it was about Bobbi Christina, and if it wasn't about Bobbi Christina, Whitney had her back turned towards it, no sexual attraction, lots of distance between them. He had to move mountains to get anything out of Whitney that was more than check-in, phone call, platonic friendship, I'm going to pray for you, Bobbi, sort of thing. And so his dissatisfaction with the relationship. Also, there was a sort of lethargicness on behalf of his partner. She was slow. She was slow to anger, slow to fall in love, slow to think, slow to move, the slower energy, just much slower than Whitney's. And Whitney's was much more faster paced. And Whitney was a freak back in the day, and Bobbi Brown is still a freak. And Bobbi Brown felt that Whitney Houston had this very intense sort of, I guess you could say he felt Bobbi Brown had this very intense desire to recreate an old relationship in a new way and hoping for a different outcome. And he's hopelessly romantic, always chasing after women, chasing after a specific relationship scenario, relationship situation. I'm going to expand this camera a little bit so you all can see the cards. Hold on 1 second. Let's lift this up just a little bit, and then bring this out a little bit more in. It doesn't matter, but either way, yeah, so I very much see this happening on behalf of Bobbi Brown, where he was pursuing Whitney. Whitney was not very much paying attention, and this was leading up until those 2 months. So I see it as Bobbi was horny, and he likes women with high energy. So he's not attracted to women based around their age. It's just if a younger woman likes to go out, she's extroverted, and is open to and she's open to her vices. Either she needs to be a heavy drinker, heavy smoker, do a little cocaine every now and then. And Bobbi Brown was good. He was really good. And because and that's what I'm hearing, because Whitney Houston was still on drugs, he thought that they could recreate some of those old experiences from the 90s or the early 2000s. I'm a 90s baby, y'all, so I don't really know Whitney like that. Sorry. So what I'm doing right now is I'm gonna do a fresh shuffle for both my New Orleans Voodoo and my Yoruba deck, because I'm gonna be pulling cards from both. I want to just go ahead and get a shuffle so I don't waste time in this video. Because I'm about to. Whoops. I'm about to. And what I'm about to do is I'm probably going to do the most detailed reading that I've done on Facebook Live for this Whitney Houston situation. The Spirit said you're going to need both decks. I hear that in my ears. All right, so did Whitney love Bobby Brown before she died? She had a very sincere affection for him. She cared about him very deeply, but in a platonic way. And Bobby Brown had a nostalgic feeling. He was not in love with Whitney, but he wouldn't mind hitting that one more time. But how did Whitney feel about Nick and Bobbi Christina dating? She felt as though she couldn't say anything. Bobbi Christina didn't allow for her to say anything about it. And Whitney Houston talked around it a lot. Bobbi Christina definitely shut down all conversations related. Bobbi Christina shut down conversations with Whitney. She wouldn't talk to her mom about it, but she was definitely very detailed with her friends. And if Whitney did pry into it, it caused high degrees of miscommunication between them. And Whitney Houston felt like there was a lot of instability in the relationship that it would damage Bobbi Christina's mental health. And it sent Bobbi Christina into a sort of depression at certain points in time. This relationship with him, and Whitney Houston was very hands off with Bobbi Christina. They had I wouldn't say a mother-daughter relationship. It's more so like the daughter that's the best friend to the mother, and this is your biological mother. But with that said, Whitney Houston felt as though Bobbi Christina was more than capable of making her own decisions. So did Whitney have any prejudices towards it? Whitney didn't have any prejudices towards it per se, but she was very skeptical about Bobbi Christina and Nick dating, simply because this increased Nick's notoriety. No one really knew who he was, and she was also afraid. Whitney was also concerned that Bobbi Christina may have lost her footing in terms of figuring out what her music career was going to be. I'm hearing that she wanted to do a reality TV show as well, and Nick Gordon wanted to be involved in that. And how did Whitney feel about Nick in particular? That's the relationship. How did she feel about Nick? She was very protective of Bobbi Christina from Nick. She felt that Nick fit into the family. Nick couldn't fit into their nuclear family. And Whitney knew that her nuclear family was dysfunctional, but she just felt like Whitney felt her family was dysfunctional, but she felt that Nick has mental illnesses that run in his family, and she felt he was crazy because he had a mental illness. I'm just articulating what Whitney felt. And she also felt that Nick was the cause of Bobbi Christina's depression. He was the cause of her. She smoked a lot of weed, and Bobbi Christina smoked a lot of weed, and Whitney saw it. So and this is what this is what the spirits are telling me. So anyway, Bobbi Christina, as far as Nick goes, she knew that Nick would end up breaking Bobbi Christina's heart, and he had been doing so a couple of times. It was kind of like Whitney saw a little bit of Bobby, hints of Bobby in Nick. She saw hints of Bobby in Nick because Bobbi Christina was drunk off of Nick's love juice. And Whitney always found Bobbi Christina defending Nick in some way. And so eventually Whitney just kind of left it alone, and Whitney went on about her life. She said, okay, my daughter's an adult. And that's how she felt, you know. How did Whitney Houston feel about Phaedra's representation on Bobby Brown's case? Whitney Houston she didn't have an opinion about Phaedra. She didn't have an opinion about Phaedra. Rather, Whitney Houston had an intelligent legal team. I'm hearing there were at least 2 people helping her, or maybe it was one lawyer. He or she has someone with a very. They have a mix between a masculine and a feminine energy. It's a very balanced masculine and feminine energy. But I hear that there were 2 lawyers on Whitney's side helping her through this case, and the lawyers had told her that, hey, Bobby won't win this because the sorts of legal arguments that his attorney is making, while they're very articulate, they're not effective. They're not effective. And it seems as though the attorneys were always telling Whitney that she had nothing to worry about because Phaedra's legal reasoning was not persuasive to the judges. In addition to that, I see Whitney had her back turned on the entire court case. She was completely unbothered. This had nothing. She didn't care. And intuitively, she knew that she was going to win against Phaedra. She didn't have any opinions about Phaedra, but what did the lawyers feel? What did Whitney Houston's lawyers feel about Phaedra? They felt that Phaedra was incredibly creative with her arguments. And they felt that Phaedra was Phaedra was a show-off at the time. So Phaedra tried to use the court of public opinion to sway some of the verdicts in her favor, but the other lawyers were more adept and more skillful in arguing law and knowing legal history and how to support their legal arguments using very, very, very strong, legal arguments from attorneys 10 to 15 years prior, that had successfully won cases 10 to 15 years prior to them. I'm sorry my language is so long. I hope you all understand what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Basically, the lawyers were more experienced than Phaedra. Period, point blank. It was a 2 against 1, 2 very brilliant brains against 1 very creative brain. Phaedra's incredibly creative with how she practices law, but it seems like she skipped some of the fundamental skills that one should have, and some of the fundamental skills, and she missed some of. She could definitely take a torts course again, and I think that she would absorb a lot more information this go round. When I say this go round, Phaedra would absorb a lot more information in her 40s than she would in her 20s. And she'll go back and say, oh my gosh, this is great. Anyway, next card, how did they feel? They felt incredibly confident. Their feet were protected. They were like, we're walking clear. They told Whitney Houston, just walk forward, just move forward, just show up to court. We got this. And they did. They had it. They had it in the bag. There was nothing. They saw Phaedra as all bark, no bite. Because her arguments, while very creative and they sound good for someone that knows the law, they were not intimidated at all. And they had already crafted their defense for Whitney Houston. Whitney was not bothered at all. And she was not bothered because she had a phenomenal legal team. So what I'm doing now is I'm about to shuffle my tarot again, and I'm going to ask about how what's the next question? Oh, did Bobbi get Whitney Houston high, or was Whitney Houston already getting high herself? That's the next question that I've been asked. So I'm over here looking at my list. All right, so who got who high? When I'm saying I'm just saying it. It's not like I'm already like I'm looking at the cards and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what this means. Okay, who got who high? All right. Both of them are lying. Both of them are lying. Okay. Whitney Houston was doing drugs. Bobbi Brown was doing drugs, and both of them lied to each other. Okay, about their drug habits or their drug use. Okay, that's it. Period. Point blank. Both of them lied to each other. Both of them believed the lie, and they're sending the lie to the public. Oh my God. Bobbi got me on this stuff because this is Whitney. Bobbi got me on cocaine or whatever because I had never really done it like that. Bobbi. The thing is, both of y'all both of them had been experimenting with drugs. Okay, both of them had been experimenting with drugs, and both of them came into the relationship acting all innocent and very mousy and coy and pretending that they didn't know what cocaine was. Oh, I've only done it a little bit. No. Both of them motherfuckers had already been snorting powder. Powder donuts, in the words of Kaya. All right, reading the cards. This talks about disease, separation, or breakup. But what this is telling me is that this card is telling me that both of them had already had drugs in their system prior to them starting the date, and neither one of them wanted to shine the light on their behaviors. But they're saying the entryway. Who opened who up to the drugs? The spirits are saying both of them are lying. And you're gonna and no, that's the reason that this is the reason that the public is dissatisfied with the answers that they're getting and they're confused. It's because both of them have been lying. Both of them were on drugs. Both of them did the drugs. They did the drugs together. And from their experiences of what they can remember from getting high all the time, Whitney believed in her heart that it was him, and Bobbi believed in his heart that it was her. Now, what is true is that both of their asses was on drugs. And what there is true is that Whitney was already doing them drugs pretty hardcore. All right. Now, moving along, they were high degrees of miscommunication, sent both of them above and beyond. They're arguing constantly back and forth. Instability in the relationship. And then, in addition to that, Bobbi Brown trying to hold on to two women, Whitney Houston trying to do movies and music. It was a mess. Bobbi Brown's career had been on the decline. This is what the spirits are telling me. I'm sorry for speaking so loudly, y'all. I'm really, really sorry. Let me calm down. So Bobbi Brown's career had started to decline. He started to get outcast in the music industry, and it sent shockwaves into their relationship, and both of them started doing even more drugs because there was a certain envy that Bobbi Brown had towards Whitney, and Whitney, being her stubborn self, did not want to listen to other people. Look, she listened to her family, put us first. Bobbi Brown said, put yourself first. And Whitney Houston said, baby, I'm putting the fans first. Fuck everybody. All right? So that's how it happened. That's what I'm seeing in the cards from what from what I'm picking up right now, is that both of them was on the drugs. When she on that Molly, she get freaky. When she on that Zan, she get sleepy. When she on that lean, she get extreme. So what you trying to say, drugs ain't your thing? Turn up. That's this ratchet song about this rapper called Losi. I'm going to shuffle this just one more time. Okay, so I'm going to read from my deck of Vodun. And we're going to ask about what happened that fateful night with Whitney Houston. Okay, so the first... No. I actually have one more question to ask about Whitney Houston's old life. Was Whitney Houston a lesbian? And did she ever have any lesbian relationships? Yes. Yes. And by way of the music industry. There was a woman that she had a very intense relationship. She was a woman that was younger than her, a woman that spent a lot of her time. This woman she was in love. This woman was very romantic, very in touch with her sexual orientation. And she was she knew that she was gay. And she wanted this relationship very deeply with Whitney. But it seems that Whitney was more focused on her career, and Whitney out of anger, Whitney was angry that she couldn't have this relationship publicly. So I see her being abusive towards this woman, verbally abusive, and there were threats. There were threats between the two. They had a very deep relationship with each other. This woman traveled with Whitney very closely on the tours. People were not able to pick up on the relationship. And the people who did, it came over time. It was very, very slow. And it was almost as though heterosexual men could pick up on the sexual tension or the sexual chemistry between the two, because the men were very attracted to Whitney, and they were also attracted to this woman companion that followed Whitney very closely. But I also see that there was one man close to the situation who wanted to expose it, and he knew a lot more than all the other men around Whitney. This man Bobby Brown. I think this man may be Bobby Brown. I'm not sure, but this man is incredibly intelligent, spiritually connected. No, this isn't Bobby Brown. This man is intelligent, spiritually connected. And perhaps Whitney had already revealed, actually it's a pastor. It was a pastor that ended the relationship. He told Whitney, and that's what I'm hearing. It's a pastor. This pastor told Whitney Houston to end this relationship that was in secret. He had already known. The spirit had told him that they were in a relationship, but I don't know if the spirit told him to tell her to leave it alone for the purpose of Whitney's career, or for the purpose, or because he was prejudiced against homosexual relationships. And when I say homosexual, I'm saying same gender relationships. There are multiple genders, same gender relationships. This woman was incredibly heartbroken. It was the end of the relationship for her. She still has very deep feelings for Whitney. I'm also seeing that there may be a gag order placed on her. She can't really talk about her relationship in great detail. Other people around her are able to talk about it. But there's an outpouring of emotion that she has for Whitney, a deep love for her. A very, very deep love for her. And it was a woman that traveled very closely to them. Okay, let's try to see if... Gonna see really, really quickly if Whitney had a lesbian relationship prior to her passing. Pull a couple cards out of here. Whoops. I'm sorry, you all. You see my little cloth over here? I'm just messing it all up. I had it all pretty over here and stuff. I'm sorry, y'all. Let's smoke this over here. One more pull out. Alright. Prior to her death, was Whitney in a lesbian relationship? The ancestors. Crying. Whitney Houston doesn't want me to tell you all. She doesn't want me to, no. The energies that are surrounding her don't want me to know. That's it, period, point blank. There's a lot that she has to say about women. There's a lot that she has to say about her old relationship. Whitney's spirit still has anger towards the relationship and bitterness towards the relationship, only because Whitney's soul couldn't fully experience it and experience it in a public way, in a way that and also a way that that her fans would. She wanted her fans to support the relationship at the time. She hoped for a more progressive society, and she hoped that progressive society would really uh, feel more. This she hoped that a progressive society would feel liberated by her publicly displaying this same-sex relationship. All right, and before I go, because there will be a part 2 of this video, I'm going to do a quick reading about her relationship with Ray J. And then in part 2 of the video, we find out what happened that fateful night. So make sure y'all stay tuned in. Her relationship with Ray J. Okay, so these cards do not want to shuffle. Whoa. This is my fault. It's the way that I'm shuffling. Some people say that their cards don't want to shuffle because they'll be like, oh my God, this spirit is having this effect. And perhaps that may be true for some people, but for me it's not. It's just my hands. Ray J. Ray J was sexually aggressive. He was sexually aggressive. Whitney Houston gave him really, really good ideas on how to tour around the United States and how to get money. So yeah, Whitney Houston, Ray J's relationship with Whitney Houston, they were sexual with each other. Was Ray J attracted? That's what's in the air. No, he was not. He was not sexually attracted. It took a lot for Ray J to deal with Whitney in that way. Ray J is the way that the spirits are describing it. Ray J is a trickster. He's very playful, and it was almost as though like one of his homeboys said, "I bet you want to go and fuck Whitney Houston." And he said, "Yeah, I will," and it turned into that. It turned into something more than what he had wanted it to. And Whitney didn't really take him that seriously. She did for a point in she took him seriously because I mean the sex was good between the two, but I don't see Whitney having anything that runs deep for him. There wasn't anything that ran deep with him. Ray J was doing it for show, for a joke, so that it could be a part of his life, something that he could always bring up that's random. He felt like this was a very trophy-like experience for himself. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I see for that. All right, we're going to end it right here. So make sure that you all tune in for part 2 of the video where I tell you all what the hell happened that fateful night that Whitney Houston passed. All right, please like and subscribe to this video. Share it with someone in your spiritual family. I'm Quintarrius Shakir. If you would like to purchase a private psychic reading, please go to www.blackspectrumnetwork.com and go to the psychic store.
I just wanna fly away. First class out of space.